I stood frozen at the entrance of the Grand Lumiere Hotel, watching my sister Heather block the revolving door with her designer handbag. My mother appeared behind her, arms crossed. The gold and crystal chandeliers glittered above them, casting light on their smug expressions. My father waited uncomfortably beside them, not meeting my eyes. I had come to host his birthday dinner at the finest restaurant in the city. Neither he nor they knew that 3 years ago, I had purchased this entire building. The security chief noticed the commotion and started walking toward us. 2 hours earlier, I had been sitting in my downtown office, reviewing quarterly reports when my phone lit up with a text from my sister. "We're taking Dad to the Grand Lumiere for his 60th birthday. Don't bother coming. We all know you can't afford it." I stared at those words, a familiar knot tightening in my stomach. Ever since I left our small Pennsylvania town 6 years ago after college, my family had painted me as the failure. The black sheep who abandoned the family insurance business to chase impossible dreams in the big city. "Jordan, the Henderson merger documents are ready," my assistant Taylor said, poking her head through my office door. I nodded, setting down my phone. "Thanks. Can you also make a call to the Grand? Tell Richard I'll be joining my family for dinner tonight after all." Taylor's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your family is coming to the Grand? Do they know?" "No," I replied, returning to my computer screen. "They still think I'm barely making rent in some shoebox apartment." The truth was far different. After leaving home, I had leveraged my business degree and natural instinct for hospitality into creating Starlight Ventures, now one of the fastest-growing luxury hotel investment companies on the East Coast. The Grand Lumiere was my third and most prestigious acquisition, though I operated behind holding companies and kept my name off public records. I had my reasons for keeping my success hidden from my family. My father always favored my sister, the dutiful daughter who stayed to help run Harrison Family Insurance. My mother constantly reminded me I wasn't practical enough to succeed. When I left, they predicted I would come crawling back within 6 months. 6 years later, I was still waiting for anyone to ask how I was actually doing. Driving to the Grand that evening, memories flooded back. My mother's dismissive Jordan has her head in the clouds at family gatherings. My sister's condescending good luck with that when I announced my departure. Only my father had shown a glimmer of support, slipping me $500 the day I left, though never standing up to my mother or sister on my behalf. I parked my modest sedan in the public lot, rather than the owner's reserved space. No need to tip my hand too early. As I walked toward the gleaming entrance of the Grand Lumiere in my simple black dress, I spotted them immediately. My mother in her pearls, my sister in designer clothes that announced their cost from 20 feet away, my father looking uncomfortable in a new suit. My sister noticed me first, her face shifting from surprise to contempt in an instant. She stepped directly into the revolving door's path, blocking my entrance with practiced casualness. "Jordan," she said, her voice sugary with false surprise. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, my mother joined her. "Jordan, really. This isn't some diner. The appetizers here cost more than what you probably make in a day." My father at least had the decency to look embarrassed. "Diane, Heather, please. It's my birthday. Jordan can join us." "Dad, we made these reservations weeks ago," Heather protested. "They won't just add another seat at the Crystal Room for someone who showed up uninvited." "I'm not uninvited," I said quietly. "Dad wanted me here. He told me so himself." My mother's eyes narrowed. "Well, we're paying, and we can't afford to add another $100 plate to our bill." The irony of her words made my chest tighten. I watched my father's shoulders slump as he failed, once again, to stand up to them. It was a familiar posture, the same one he'd adopted throughout my childhood when my accomplishments were minimized or my dreams dismissed. That was when Richard, my head of security, noticed the commotion at the entrance. As he approached, I saw my sister's stance become even more rigid, preparing to have me humiliatingly escorted away. Little did she know what was about to happen. "Miss Harrison," Richard said as he reached us, addressing me directly with a respectful nod, "is everything all right?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's mouth dropped open slightly while my sister's eyes darted between Richard and me in confusion. "Everything's fine, Richard," I replied smoothly. My family is joining me for dinner in the Cristal Room tonight, my father's 60th birthday. Richard's professional demeanor never wavered, though I caught the slight twinkle in his eye. Of course, we've been expecting you all. The staff is prepared for your arrival. He held open the door with a slight bow. Please, follow me. As we walked through the opulent lobby, the staff offered nods and smiles of recognition. To me, not my family. The marble floors echoed with our footsteps, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across the Art Deco furnishings I had personally selected during the hotel's renovation. Jordan, my mother hissed, grabbing my arm. What is going on? How do they know you? I gently removed her hand. We can discuss it over dinner. The maitre d' greeted us at the restaurant entrance. Miss Harrison, we're delighted you could join us tonight. Your usual table is ready. My sister made a strangled noise beside me. There must be some mistake, she said loudly. We have a reservation under Harrison, but it's not for her. She's just tagging along. The maitre d' looked to me questioningly. I smiled. My sister seems confused. Please seat us at my regular table. And bring a bottle of the 1974 Dom Perignon to start. It's my father's favorite year. As we were led through the restaurant, past tables of New York's elite, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. This wasn't how I'd wanted them to find out. For years, I'd hoped they would simply ask about my life, show genuine interest in my career. Instead, they'd filled in the blanks with their own assumptions, painting me as struggling and unsuccessful because it fit their narrative that leaving the family business was a mistake. We were seated at the best table in the house, with views overlooking Central Park. My father looked around in awe, momentarily forgetting his discomfort. My mother sat rigidly, her social smile fixed in place while her eyes burned with questions. My sister couldn't stop staring at the staff, who continued to treat me with deference. Jordan, my father finally said, how can you possibly afford this? Are you in some kind of trouble? The sommelier arrived with the champagne, presenting the bottle to me first. Perfect timing, I said. We're celebrating my father's birthday tonight. After the champagne was poured and the sommelier departed, I took a deep breath. I think it's time I told you what I've really been doing these past 6 years. I explained how, after leaving home, I'd started in hotel management, quickly rising through the ranks at a boutique chain, how I'd spotted investment opportunities others missed, how I'd secured backing from venture capitalists impressed with my business plan, how I'd acquired my first small hotel 3 years ago, turned it around, and used the profits to expand. The Grand Lumiere is the flagship of Starlight Ventures, I concluded. My company. I completed the purchase 3 years ago. My father's champagne glass froze midway to his lips. You own this hotel? The entire hotel? And 6 others across 3 states, I added. We're expanding to Chicago next quarter. My mother's face had gone through a remarkable transformation during my explanation, moving from disbelief to shock to calculation. Why would you keep this from us? She demanded, though her tone had lost its earlier sharpness. When was I supposed to tell you? I asked quietly. At Christmas, when you spent the whole dinner talking about Heather's promotion. Or maybe at Thanksgiving, when you suggested I consider community college so I could finally get a real job. My sister, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke. So what, you brought us here to humiliate us? To show off how successful you are while making us look foolish? No, I replied. Dad called last week. He wanted to see me on his birthday, but said you two had already made plans. I offered to host you all here because I thought it would be special for him. I turned to my father. I never intended for it to become this. My father reached across the table and took my hand, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I had no idea, Jordan. No idea at all. The waiter appeared to take our orders, preventing further conversation. As we selected from the menu crafted by the Michelin-starred chef I had personally recruited from Paris, I noticed my mother's gaze traveling around the restaurant, noting the celebrities and business moguls dining nearby. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, recalculating my value in her world. That realization didn't bring me the satisfaction I might once have expected. Instead, I felt a profound emptiness. Success hadn't changed their perception of me. It had only changed how valuable they now considered my existence. As our appetizers arrived, expertly presented on hand, painted porcelain, I wondered if this dinner would bridge the distance between us or simply replace one type of estrangement with another. The dinner progressed with a strained politeness that felt foreign to our family gatherings. My mother, ever the social chameleon, had shifted from condescension to something approaching maternal pride, though her eyes held a calculating gleam that made my skin crawl. "You should have told us, Jordan," she said, delicately cutting into her filet mignon. "Family shouldn't have secrets." I sipped my wine, a private reserve Cabernet from a vineyard in Napa that had become one of my hotel's exclusive suppliers. "I tried to share my life with you. For the first 2 years, I called home every Sunday. You always seemed more interested in telling me about Heather's accomplishments than hearing about mine." My father looked down at his plate. I should have asked more questions. "Yes, you should have," I agreed, surprising myself with my directness. 6 years ago, I would have softened the blow, made excuses for him. But success had given me something more valuable than money. It had given me the confidence to speak my truth. Heather, who had been pushing her food around her plate, suddenly set down her fork with a clatter. "This is ridiculous. Are we supposed to feel guilty because you decided to be mysterious about your life? You left us, Jordan. You left the business Dad built for both of us." "I left a business I never wanted to join." I corrected her. "Dad built it for you, Heather. You were always the one who loved insurance. I wanted something different. And now you're throwing your success in our faces," she snapped. "By hosting Dad's birthday dinner? That's hardly throwing anything in anyone's face." My mother placed her hand on Heather's arm, silencing her with a warning look. "What your sister means is that it's a lot to process, finding out you own all of this." She gestured around the elegant dining room. "It's quite a shock." "I imagine it is," I replied. "Almost as shocking as being told you can't afford to attend your own father's birthday dinner." My father winced, and I immediately regretted my words. This wasn't how I wanted the evening to go. I had fantasized about this moment for years, my family finally seeing me as successful, accomplished. In my daydreams, they had been proud, apologetic for doubting me. The reality was messier, laden with years of resentment on all sides. "Let's take a pause," I suggested, setting down my napkin. "Dad, would you like a tour of the hotel? The view from the rooftop garden is spectacular at night." Relief washed over his face at the chance to escape the tension. "I'd love that, Jordan." As we stood, my mother rose as well. "We'll all come," she announced. I nodded, though I had hoped for time alone with my father. Of course. The executive chef emerged from the kitchen as we prepared to leave, approaching our table with a warm smile. "Miss Harrison, is everything satisfactory this evening?" "Wonderful as always, Antoine," I replied. "We're just taking a brief tour before dessert." "My father's birthday," I added, gesturing to him. Antoine's face lit up. "Ah, the birthday. Then you must allow me to prepare something special for your return." "A surprise." My father looked genuinely touched. "That's very kind of you." As we walked through the restaurant, I noticed my sister's expression darkening. Once we reached the privacy of the elevator, she could no longer contain herself. "So everyone here just fawns over you now?" she asked bitterly. "The great Jordan Harrison, Hotel Empress?" I pressed the button for the rooftop. "They're professional and courteous to their employer. There's a difference." "Heather, please," my mother interjected, her social mask firmly back in place now that we were in a confined space with others. 2 well-dressed couples had joined us in the elevator, and she offered them a practiced smile before turning back to my sister. "Not here." The rooftop garden was my proudest addition to the Grand Lumiere. I had transformed what was once a plain service area into an oasis of greenery and elegant seating, with panoramic views of the city skyline. At night, with strategic lighting illuminating the carefully curated plants and water features, it became magical. As we stepped out into the garden, my father's face registered genuine wonder. "This is incredible, Jordan." For the first time that evening, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with triumph or vindication. Thanks, Dad. We walked to the glass barrier at the edge, looking out at the glittering cityscape. My father stood beside me, while my mother and sister lagged behind, speaking in hushed tones I couldn't quite make out. You really did it, my father said quietly. You built something amazing. I did, I agreed, surprising myself with the thickness in my throat. I always knew you would, he added, and the simple statement hit me like a physical blow. You never said that, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. Not once. He turned to face me, his expression pained. I know. I should have. Your mother and Heather were so sure you were making a mistake. And the business. It was always easier to go along. Easier for whom? I asked, but there was no real anger in my voice anymore, just a deep old sadness. I was wrong, he said simply. I'm sorry, Jordan. Behind us, I heard my mother clear her throat pointedly. The view is lovely, dear, but it's getting chilly. Shall we return to dinner? I turned to find her examining an antique wrought iron table setting with the eye of an appraiser. Beside her, Heather stood with arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Actually, I said, making a decision, there's one more place I'd like to show you first. I led them back to the elevator, this time pressing the button marked PH. The doors opened directly into a private foyer, decorated in subtle, elegant tones of cream and gold. This is the presidential suite, I explained as we entered the spacious living area with its floor, 2 ceiling windows. It's where we host visiting dignitaries and celebrities. My mother immediately gravitated toward a small Degas bronze on a side table. Is this authentic? She asked, her voice betraying her awe despite herself. It is, I confirmed. The art collection was curated specifically for this suite. My father wandered toward the windows, taking in the breathtaking view. Heather remained by the door, arms still crossed defensively. And this, I continued, leading them through to a connecting door, is my apartment. The door opened into a space that was clearly a home rather than a hotel suite. While still elegant, it contained personal touches, books stacked on coffee tables, a throw blanket draped over a sofa, framed photographs on shelves. You live here? In the hotel? My father asked, surprised. It's convenient, I replied with a small smile. The commute is great. I watched as my father moved to examine the photographs. His step faltered as he recognized himself in several frames. Pictures from my childhood, family vacations, his teaching me to fish at our lake house. There were no recent family photos because there had been no recent family gatherings I'd been truly welcome at. My mother, meanwhile, was examining the apartment with frank curiosity, no doubt mentally calculating its worth. This must be quite expensive real estate, she remarked. It would be, if I were paying market rate, I acknowledged. One of the perks of ownership. Heather finally spoke, her voice tight. So why show us all this, Jordan? To rub our noses in how successful you are without us? I turned to face my sister directly. No, Heather. To show you that despite everything, you're still my family. These pictures? I gestured to the frames my father was still examining. They're here because, regardless of how things have been between us, you're all still part of who I am. For the first time that evening, Heather seemed at a loss for words. My mother, however, was not. Well, she said briskly, I think it's time we acknowledge that perhaps we were too quick to judge your decision to leave. Clearly, you've done very well for yourself. It was exactly the kind of apology I had expected from her, acknowledging my success without taking responsibility for her treatment of me. 6 years ago, I might have accepted it, grateful for any crumb of approval. Now, I recognized it for what it was. That's not an apology, Mom, I said quietly. And right now, I'm not even sure that's what I want. What I'd like is for us to start being honest with each other. Can we try that? The question hung in the air between us, unanswered, as my phone chimed with a text message. I glanced down to see it was from Antoine. Birthday surprise ready when you are. We should head back down, I said. The chef has prepared something special for Dad. As we filed back toward the elevator, I noticed my father lingering, looking at a particular photograph. It showed him teaching me to drive his old pickup truck when I was 16, both of us laughing at something now forgotten. "I remember that day," he said softly. "You learned faster than Heather did." It was such a small thing, that acknowledgement. But in that moment it felt like the first truthful thing any of them had said to me in years. Back in the Cristal room, Antoine had outdone himself. The lights dimmed as we were escorted to our table, and a parade of staff emerged bearing a spectacular birthday cake illuminated with sparklers rather than traditional candles. The other diners applauded appreciatively as the cake, a perfect recreation of my father's beloved fishing cabin at the lake, was placed before him. "Happy birthday, Mr. Harrison," Antoine announced with a flourish. "With compliments from your daughter." My father's eyes shimmered with emotion in the sparkler light. Beside him, my mother's smile was fixed, but her eyes were calculating, no doubt wondering how she could leverage her daughter's success among her social circle. Heather sat stiffly, clapping with the barest politeness. As the sparklers burned down and the regular lighting returned, the waitstaff served champagne to the surrounding tables. "Miss Harrison has arranged for everyone to join in toasting her father's 60th birthday," the sommelier announced, generating another round of applause. My father leaned toward me, clearly overwhelmed. "Jordan, this is too much." "It's not nearly enough," I replied softly. "Happy birthday, Dad." As the cake was served, each tier a different one of my father's favorite flavors, a strange tension settled over our table. The public celebration had forced a temporary truce, but underneath, nothing had been resolved. "So," my mother said, her voice honeyed in a way that immediately put me on alert, "will you be coming home for Christmas this year, now that we know about your situation? We'd love to have you." 6 years of missed holidays, of invitations that felt like afterthoughts when they came at all. And now, suddenly, I was welcome. "I usually spend Christmas in Aspen at one of my properties," I replied. "The staff and I have a tradition." My mother's smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened slightly. "Surely your employees would understand you wanting to be with family." "They are my family in many ways," I said. "They've been there for me consistently for years." Heather made a dismissive noise. "Hotel employees aren't family, Jordan." "Neither is family, sometimes," I countered, surprising myself with the directness. My father set down his fork. "I think what your sister means is that blood is thicker than water." "That's not actually the full quote," I replied. "The original is, 'The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.' It means the bonds we choose are stronger than those we're born into." My mother's social smile remained fixed in place, but her voice carried an edge. "That's a very convenient interpretation for someone who abandoned her family obligations." And there it was, the real issue, finally spoken aloud. In their eyes, I hadn't just left home or chosen a different career. I had betrayed a fundamental obligation by prioritizing my own dreams over their expectations. "I didn't abandon anything," I said evenly. "I chose a different path." "That's allowed, Mom." "Of course it is," she replied. "And look how well it turned out. If we'd known you'd end up like this." She gestured vaguely at our surroundings. "Well, we might have been more supportive." The honesty of it, that their support was contingent on my financial success rather than my happiness, was breathtaking. "So, you would have supported me if you'd known I'd become wealthy?" I clarified, "but not when you thought I was struggling to follow my dreams?" My mother had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," Heather interjected suddenly. "Let's stop pretending. You've made your point, Jordan. You're successful. Congratulations. You win." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time that evening. Beyond the hostility, I saw something else, a deep unhappiness that reminded me of my own feelings in the years before I left home. "This isn't about winning or losing," I said quietly. "This is about the fact that not once in 6 years did any of you ask how I was really doing. You assumed I was failing because it confirmed what you already believed, that leaving was a mistake." My father looked down at his plate. "I asked your mother about you," he said softly, "after our calls. But you never asked me directly," I pointed out. "And when Mom and Heather told me not to come to family events because it would be awkward or too expensive for me, you never objected." He couldn't meet my eyes. I should have. My mother set down her champagne glass with more force than necessary. This is hardly the time or place for this conversation, Jordan. It's your father's birthday. You're right, I conceded. It is his birthday. So let's ask him what he wants. I turned to my father. Dad, what do you want? Not what Mom wants, or what Heather wants, or even what I want. What do you want? My father looked startled, as though no one had asked him that question in years. Perhaps no one had. After a long moment, he spoke. I want my family back together, he said simply. All of us. Heather made a scoffing sound. That ship sailed when Jordan left. No, my father said with unexpected firmness. That ship sailed when we let her go without support, when we made her feel she had to choose between her dreams and her family. He turned to me. I failed you, Jordan. I'm sorry. The simple apology, words I'd waited 6 years to hear, hit me with unexpected force. I blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. Thank you, I managed to say. My mother looked uncomfortable, unused to my father taking such a stand. Well, water under the bridge now, isn't it? Jordan's done very well for herself, and we're all together tonight. Let's focus on that. But Heather wasn't ready to let go, so we're just supposed to pretend the last 6 years didn't happen? That she didn't walk out on the family business? On us? I didn't walk out on you, Heather, I said. I walked towards something else. There's a difference. Not to the people left behind, she snapped. And suddenly, I understood. My sister wasn't angry because I had left the business. She was angry because I had left her. In her mind, I had abandoned our sibling bond along with our parents' expectations. I'm sorry you felt abandoned, I said gently. That was never my intention. But I couldn't stay and be who I needed to be. And who is that, exactly? She asked bitterly. Hotel mogul Jordan Harrison, too important for her small-town family? No, I replied. Just Jordan, following my own path instead of someone else's plan for me. I hesitated, then took a risk. Are you happy, Heather? Truly happy at Harrison Insurance? The question clearly caught her off guard. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, I said. Because I think that might be what this is really about. Not that I left, but that you stayed when maybe you wanted something else, too. Her face flushed, telling me I'd hit a nerve. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You were always more creative than me. Remember how you wanted to study photography in college? Before Mom convinced you it wasn't practical? My mother interjected sharply. That's quite enough, Jordan. We're here to celebrate your father's birthday, not dredge up ancient history. It's not ancient history if it's still affecting us now, I countered. And I think it is. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Around us, other diners continued their meals, oblivious to the family drama unfolding in their midst. My father looked pained, caught as always between his wife's demands and his daughter's conflict. Finally, he spoke again. Jordan's right. We need to be honest with each other, all of us. He turned to my mother, including you, Diane, and me too. My mother looked genuinely shocked. In 35 years of marriage, I wondered if my father had ever directly contradicted her in public before. Before she could respond, Antoine appeared at our table again. Miss Harrison, forgive the interruption. The governor has just arrived and is asking if you might stop by his table briefly. All eyes at our table turned to me. This was the moment when the full extent of my connections would become clear to my family, not just wealth, but influence. Please tell the governor I'll be over shortly, I replied. I'm celebrating my father's birthday at the moment. Antoine nodded and withdrew. My mother's expression had transformed completely, naked ambition replacing her earlier resentment. You know the governor? She asked, not bothering to hide her excitement. Personally? We serve on the same charitable foundation board, I explained, watching her mentally recalculate my value yet again. You should introduce us, she said immediately. Your father and I contributed to his campaign. 6 years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to finally impress her. Now, I saw her interest for what it was, not pride in me, but opportunity for herself. Mom, I said gently, I'd be happy to introduce you all. But I need to know, if I were still struggling, if I hadn't succeeded like this, would you be asking to be part of my life again? The question hung in the air, unanswered. In her silence, I had my answer. The remainder of dinner progressed with strained politeness. My mother had retreated into her social persona, all surface charm and careful deflection. Heather alternated between sullen silence and sharp remarks disguised as jokes. Only my father seemed to be making a genuine effort, asking questions about my business and life that he should have asked years ago. As dessert was served, my mother leaned forward with renewed determination. "Jordan, your father and I have been discussing renovating the lake house. Perhaps you could recommend some contractors? I'm sure, with your connections, you must know the best people." I set down my coffee cup. "I'm happy to share some names, Mom." "Wonderful," she beamed, as though we'd never had a moment of conflict. "And perhaps you could come up for the 4th of July to see the improvements? The Andersons always ask about you at their annual barbecue." The same Andersons who, according to my cousin, had been told I was finding myself in the city when they asked where I was during past family gatherings. "I'll check my schedule," I replied noncommittally. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I would really love to have you home more often, Jordan, now that we understand everything. Now that you know I'm successful." "You mean," I said quietly. "That's not fair," my mother protested, though her earlier words had made it perfectly clear that was exactly the case. "Isn't it?" I asked. 6 years, Mom. 6 years of being the family disappointment. 6 years of half-hearted holiday invitations. 6 years of hearing about Heather's promotions, but never being asked about my own career. "You could have told us," Heather interjected. "I tried," I replied, "but after a while it became clear that none of you were actually interested in hearing it." My father looked genuinely pained. "I was interested, Jordan. I just didn't know how to ask without your mother and sister." "Without us what, Dad?" Heather challenged. "Go ahead, say it." He sighed heavily. "Without you both getting upset. It was easier to keep the peace." "By sacrificing your relationship with me," I said softly. My mother's face tightened. "That's hardly fair, Jordan. You were the one who left." "I left home, Mom. I didn't leave the family. You all pushed me out of that because I didn't follow the plan." A heavy silence fell over the table. After a moment, my father spoke again. "You're right," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry. I should have been stronger. I should have supported you more openly." The simple admission seemed to shock my mother and sister as much as it did me. In our family, apologies were rare, especially ones that acknowledged actual fault. "Thank you, Dad," I said, reaching across to squeeze his hand. My mother's expression hardened. "Well, if we're all being so honest tonight, then let me be honest too." "Yes, Jordan, we're impressed by your success. Who wouldn't be? But that doesn't change the fact that you abandoned your responsibilities to the family business." "They weren't my responsibilities," I countered. "They were your expectations. There's a difference." "The business was built for both of you," she insisted. "No, it wasn't," I replied. "It was built for Heather. She was the one who liked it, who had a talent for it. I was just expected to fall in line." Heather's face flushed. "So you get to chase your dreams while I stay behind and do the dutiful daughter routine? How is that fair?" And there it was, the real root of her resentment, finally spoken aloud. Not that I had left the business, but that I had left while she had stayed, bound by the expectations I had rejected. "It's not fair," I agreed, surprising her. "It wasn't fair to expect me to stay in a career I didn't want, and it's not fair to expect you to stay if you want something else." Heather looked taken aback. "What are you talking about? I never said I wanted something else." "You didn't have to," I replied. "I remember how excited you were about photography in high school, how you talked about studying it in college until Mom convinced you it wasn't practical." My mother made a dismissive gesture. "That was a hobby, not a career path." "Like hotels were just a pipe dream for me?" I asked. My father had been watching this exchange with growing understanding. "Heather," he said slowly, "is that true? Did you want to study something else?" My sister looked cornered. "It doesn't matter now. I'm 32, not 18. I have responsibilities." "It matters if you're unhappy," he insisted. I'm not. She stopped, unable to finish the lie. After a moment, she continued more quietly. It's not that simple, Dad. Not everyone gets to just walk away and start over. I didn't just walk away, I corrected her. I worked 16-hour days for years. I lived in a studio apartment the size of this table while I saved money and built connections. It wasn't easy, Heather. But you did it, she said. And for the first time I heard something like envy rather than resentment in her voice. I did, I acknowledged. And you could too, if there's something else you want. My mother intervened sharply. That's enough, Jordan. I won't have you encouraging your sister to abandon her responsibilities too. They're not responsibilities if they're forced, Mom. They're obligations, prisons. My father set his napkin on the table with unusual decisiveness. Diane, we need to listen to what the girls are saying. Both of them. He turned to Heather. If you're unhappy at Harrison Insurance, I want to know. We can figure something out. My sister looked stunned, as though the possibility of her happiness being a priority had never occurred to her. I don't know what to say. Say what you really want, I suggested gently. For once, let's all say what we really want, not what we think everyone else expects. My mother looked like she might object again, but something in my father's expression stopped her. Instead, she sat back, arms crossed defensively. Fine, she said tightly. You first, Jordan. What is it you really want from this family? It was a fair question, one I hadn't fully articulated even to myself. What did I want from these people who had hurt me, dismissed me, and now suddenly valued me because of my success? I want to be seen, I said finally, not as the family disappointment or the family success story, just as me, Jordan, your daughter and sister who loves you but had to find her own way. My father nodded slowly. I can try to do that. My mother's expression remained guarded. And what about the family legacy? The business your father built? The business is Heather's if she wants it, I replied. It always was. But that should be her choice, not her sentence. All eyes turned to my sister. After a long moment, she spoke. I do want something else, she admitted, the words seeming to surprise even her. I've been taking photography classes at night for the past year. No one knows. She looked directly at our mother. I knew you'd say it was a waste of time. My mother looked genuinely shocked. Heather, I had no idea you were still interested in that. Because you never asked, my sister replied. You just assumed I was happy following your plan. For perhaps the first time in my memory, my mother appeared at a loss for words. My father reached over and took her hand. We've been doing this all wrong, Diane, he said quietly. Both of us. We've been so focused on the business, on appearances, that we haven't been seeing our own daughters. My mother's carefully constructed facade cracked slightly. I just wanted what was best for them. For all of us. What you thought was best, I corrected gently. But we're adults now, Mom. We get to decide that for ourselves. A tear slipped down my mother's cheek, something so rare that it momentarily stunned us all into silence. She quickly wiped it away, but not before I caught a glimpse of something I'd never expected to see: uncertainty. I don't know how to be any other way, she admitted. This is how my parents raised me. Practical considerations first, dreams second, if at all. It was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Not an apology, but an explanation that helped me understand her better than I ever had before. Maybe it's not too late for us all to learn a different way, my father suggested. The tension that had dominated our table all evening began to subtly shift. Not disappearing, there was too much history for that, but transforming into something that held the possibility, however slight, of healing. I'd like that, I said softly. Antoine approached our table again. Miss Harrison, is there anything else you require this evening? I looked around at my family. Complicated, flawed, but mine nonetheless. No, Antoine. I think we have everything we need right now. As he withdrew, my father raised his glass. I'd like to make a toast, he announced. To new beginnings, and to my daughters, both of them, finding their own paths. We clinked glasses, the sound crystalline and bright with possibility. 3 days after my father's birthday dinner, I was reviewing renovation plans for my Chicago property when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. "Your sister is here to see you," Taylor said, her expression carefully neutral. I had filled her in on the dramatic family dinner the morning after. I set down the blueprints. "Send her in." Heather entered my office hesitantly, taking in the space with obvious curiosity. The wall of windows overlooked Central Park, while the opposite wall displayed framed photos of each of my hotels. She paused to study them before turning to face me. "Nice view," she commented. "Thanks," I replied. "Would you like some coffee?" She nodded, and I asked Taylor to bring us 2 cups before gesturing Heather to the sitting area near the windows. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon," I admitted as we settled into the leather armchairs. "I didn't expect to be here," she replied with a wry smile. But I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. Taylor returned with our coffee and withdrew discreetly. I waited as Heather added cream to hers, clearly gathering her thoughts. "I've been angry at you for 6 years, she finally said. "I told myself it was because you abandoned the family business, but that wasn't it. Not really." "I know," I said quietly. She looked up sharply. "Do you?" "You were angry because I left you behind," I said. "Because I had the courage to walk away. And you didn't." She stared into her coffee cup. "That makes me sound pathetic." "No," I disagreed. "It makes you sound human." A silence fell between us, not entirely uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke again. "I went through Mom and Dad's attic yesterday. Found these." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small stack of photographs, placing them on the coffee table between us. I picked them up. They were my photographs from our high school years, landscapes and portraits I had taken with our father's old camera before I became focused on business school. "You were good," she said. "I forgot how good you were." "So were you," I replied. "Better, actually." She shook her head. "I don't know about that, but I've been thinking. I found a 6-week photography intensive in Santa Fe this summer. It's taught by one of the photographers I've always admired." I set the photos down. "Are you going to apply?" "I already did," she admitted. "Last night. I haven't told Mom and Dad yet." "How do you think they'll react?" She sighed. "Dad will be supportive, I think. After the other night, he's different somehow, like something woke up in him." She paused. "Mom will be Mom." "And the business?" I asked. "That's partly why I'm here," she replied. "I don't want to abandon it completely. It's still Dad's legacy. But I was thinking, maybe there's a way to combine things. Corporate photography is a growing field. Insurance companies need images for campaigns, websites." I nodded, seeing where she was heading. "You could transition to heading the marketing division, build an in-house photography department." "Exactly," she said, looking relieved that I understood. "But I need to develop my skills first, hence Santa Fe. It sounds like you've given this a lot of thought." "I've had 6 years of watching you follow your dreams from afar," she said wryly, while telling myself I was the responsible one for staying put. "We can both be responsible in different ways," I pointed out. She nodded, then hesitated before continuing. "There's something else. I found an old business plan you wrote in college for a boutique hotel in Cascade Valley. It was in a box of your stuff in the attic." I remembered it well, my first serious attempt at planning my future in hospitality. That was a lifetime ago. "The land you wanted to buy. It's still available," she said. I checked. "The old Kessler property by the lake." I set down my coffee cup. "Why would you check on that?" Heather took a deep breath. "Because I was thinking, what if we did it together? You have the hotel expertise. I could handle the photography, the marketing, create something unique. A boutique hotel with a focus on art and photography." I stared at her, genuinely shocked. "You want to go into business together? After everything?" "It's crazy, right?" she said, giving a nervous laugh. "But I can't stop thinking about it. A Harrison Sisters venture, back in our hometown but on our own terms." The proposal was unexpected, to say the least. After years of estrangement, The idea of a joint business venture seemed premature, and yet I couldn't deny that the old property had a special magic. I had dreamed of transforming it long before I had the means to do so. It would be complicated, I said carefully. We have a lot to work through before we could be business partners. I know, she acknowledged. I'm not saying we should do it tomorrow, but maybe. Something to work toward? While I learn photography and you do your Chicago expansion? I studied my sister's face, seeing an openness there that had been absent for years. Whether it was my success, our father's birthday revelations, or simply the passage of time, something had shifted. I'd need to see a business plan, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. A real one, not just an idea. Her face lit up. I can do that, after Santa Fe. And we'd need to establish clear boundaries, business and family separate. Agreed, she said quickly. And I'd need to prove myself first. I know I can't just ride on your success. The fact that she understood this, that she wasn't simply looking to capitalize on my established name, told me more about her sincerity than anything else could have. We should take it slow, I advised. Start with rebuilding our relationship as sisters. The business can come later, if it still feels right. She nodded, looking relieved. That's fair. I hesitated, then decided to ask the question that had been on my mind since she arrived. How are Mom and Dad taking all of this? Heather's expression became more complex. Dad called me this morning. He's thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations at the agency. Says he wants to explore other interests while he's still young enough to enjoy them. Like what? I asked, genuinely curious. Fishing, for one. He's talking about a 2-week trip to Montana. She smiled. I think seeing what you've built by following your passion, it woke something up in him. And Mom? I pressed. Heather's smile faded slightly. That's more complicated. She's processing. Finding out about my photography classes upset her more than your hotel empire, I think. Like she didn't know me at all. She doesn't, I said gently. Not the real you. Just like she never knew the real me. I'm starting to see that, Heather admitted. All these years I thought I was being the good daughter, but I was just being the compliant one. The admission cost her something. I could see it in the set of her shoulders. For someone who had built her identity around being the one who stayed, the one who followed the rules, this was a profound shift. It takes courage to change course, I told her, especially when you've been sailing in one direction for so long. She nodded, then glanced at her watch. I should go. I have a flight back this afternoon. She hesitated. Would it be weird if I asked for a tour before I leave? Of the hotel? Not weird at all, I assured her, rising from my chair. I'd be happy to show you around. As we walked through the Grand Lumiere together, I pointed out the design elements I had personally selected, the operational systems I had implemented, the staff members who had been with me since the beginning. For the first time, I was sharing my world with my sister, not as a statement or a victory lap, but as a genuine connection between us. You really built something amazing, she said as we stood in the rooftop garden again. I know I didn't say that the other night. I was too shocked, too caught up in my own stuff. Thank you, I replied, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sunshine. That means a lot, coming from you. She turned to face me directly. I'm sorry, Jordan. For everything. For how we treated you when you left. For not standing up for you. For the funeral dinner. It was the apology I had wanted for years, delivered simply and sincerely. Not from my mother, whose approval I had once craved but now understood might never fully come. Not even from my father, whose quiet support had always been there but too often silenced. But from my sister, the person whose rejection had hurt the most because we had once been so close. I'm sorry too, I said, for not trying harder to maintain our relationship, for letting the distance grow. She blinked rapidly. Do you think we can start over? Not over, I replied. We have too much history for that. But maybe we can start from here, acknowledging the past, but not letting it dictate our future. She nodded, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes. I'd like that. As we rode the elevator back down to the lobby, she asked, Will you come home for Christmas? For real this time? Not just because Mom wants to show you off to the neighbors? I considered the question. I think I might. But I have a condition. What's that? She asked warily. That we all acknowledge what we're actually feeling. No more pretending everything's fine when it isn't. She winced slightly. That's going to be a challenge for Mom. I know, I agreed. But it's necessary if we're going to move forward. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby, where Richard noticed us and offered a respectful nod. Miss Harrison, he greeted me, then turned to my sister. Miss Harrison? He added with a slight smile. Heather looked startled, then laughed. That's going to take some getting used to. As we reached the entrance, she turned to me one last time. Thank you. For the tour, for listening, for being open to whatever comes next. That's what sisters do, I replied, surprising myself with how natural the words felt after so many years of estrangement. We hugged briefly, awkwardly, but it was a start. As I watched her taxi pull away from the Grand Lumiere, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph or vindication, but hope. Hope that from the ruins of our broken relationship, something new and authentic might emerge. Back in my office, I found myself looking at the Cascade Valley property online. The lakeside location was even more beautiful than I remembered, with potential that went beyond what my college self could have envisioned. A partnership with Heather seemed premature, perhaps even foolhardy given our history, and yet the idea had taken root in my mind. Not now, but someday. When we had rebuilt trust, when we had learned to be sisters again first and potential business partners second. I saved the property listing to my favorites, not making any decisions yet, but leaving the door open to possibility. 1 year later, I stood with my father at the edge of Cascade Lake, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. The Kessler property stretched behind us, 30 acres of prime lakefront land now cleared of its dilapidated structures and ready for new beginnings. It's just as beautiful as I remembered, my father said, his fishing rod casting a perfect arc across the water. Better, I agreed, now that we own it. He smiled, the expression more relaxed than I could remember seeing in years. The past 12 months had brought changes none of us could have anticipated on the night of his birthday dinner at the Grand Lumiere. He had indeed stepped back from Harrison Insurance, transitioning to a consultant role that left him free to pursue the retirement activities he'd always postponed. My mother had struggled with the change initially, her identity so wrapped up in being the wife of the agency's president that his decision felt like a personal rejection. Their marriage had weathered a rocky period, culminating in a series of counseling sessions that revealed how much they had both been living according to expectations rather than desires. To everyone's surprise, especially her own, my mother had discovered a passion for local politics, recently winning a seat on the town council where her organizational skills and unflagging energy had found a new outlet. Heather had completed her photography intensive in Santa Fe, returning with a portfolio that impressed even the most established professionals in the field. She had indeed created a marketing division at Harrison Insurance, bringing in new clients attracted by her fresh approach. But her true focus now was our joint venture Cascade Valley Retreat, a boutique hotel and arts center that would combine my hospitality expertise with her visual aesthetic. "Have you heard from your mother today?" my father asked, reeling in his line. "She called this morning. Wanted to make sure the contractors understand the historical significance of the property." He chuckled. "Some things never change. She's channeling all that control into being helpful now." "It is helpful," I acknowledged. "She knows this town's history better than anyone, and she's right that we should honor the property's past. My mother and I had reached an understanding over the past year. Not the warm, unconditional relationship I might once have wished for, but something honest. She respected my business acumen, if not always my personal choices. I respected her intelligence and drive, if not her methods. We were learning to accept each other as we were, not as we wished the other would be. Heather's flight gets in at 8, my father reminded me, checking his watch. Should we head back to town? In a minute, I replied. I want to enjoy this a little longer. The decision to invest in my hometown had come gradually. First, the purchase of the Kessler property as a personal project. Then Heather's suggestion that we combine our talents. Finally, The realization that I could expand my business while also healing old wounds, not just with my family, but with the community I had left behind. My father set down his fishing rod and turned to face me fully. "I want you to know how proud I am, Jordan. Not just of all this," he gestured to the property, "but of who you've become. Strong enough to forge your own path, but generous enough to create space for reconciliation." "It wasn't always easy," I admitted. "The worthwhile things rarely are," he replied. "Your mother and I, we made mistakes. We tried to put you and your sister into boxes that weren't right for either of you." "You did your best with what you knew," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. The anger that had driven me for so long had gradually transformed into understanding. Not excusing their behavior, but seeing it in the context of their own upbringings and limitations. "We could have done better," he insisted, "but I'm grateful we've been given a second chance to get it right." As we packed up the fishing gear and walked back toward the clearing where construction would soon begin, I reflected on how much had changed since that night at the Grand Lumiere. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, difficult conversations, old patterns reasserting themselves, moments when it seemed easier to retreat to our separate corners. But something fundamental had shifted. The truth, once spoken, couldn't be unsaid. The recognition of each other as individuals with valid dreams and paths couldn't be undone. We were learning a new way to be family, not perfect, not without conflict, but authentic in a way we had never been before. Back in town, we met Heather at the small regional airport. She stepped off the plane with her camera around her neck, having documented the entire flight for a personal project on small-town America. "How's our lake looking?" she asked, hugging us both. "Perfect," I assured her. "The architects are coming tomorrow to walk the property." Over dinner at the local steakhouse, now owned by a former classmate who had trained at the Culinary Institute of America before returning home, we discussed the latest plans for Cascade Valley Retreat. "The main lodge will have 24 rooms," I explained, sketching on a napkin, "plus 8 lakeside cabins for longer stays. And the arts center here," Heather added, pointing to the eastern section of my drawing, with studios for resident artists, gallery space, and classrooms for workshops. My father listened proudly as we outlined our vision. "Your mother's worried about the zoning for the public events space," he mentioned, "but she thinks she can help navigate the council approval." I smiled at the thought of my mother using her newfound political influence to support our venture. A year ago, I would have seen it as manipulation or control. Now I recognized it as her way of contributing, of being part of something important to her daughters. "Tell her we'd appreciate her help," I said sincerely. As we were finishing dinner, my phone chimed with a text from David, now my husband of 3 months. He had stayed in New York to oversee operations at the Grand Lumiere, while I focused on the Cascade Valley project. "All good?" Heather asked. "Great," I confirmed. "David's coming out next weekend. Wants to see how the clearing is progressing." My sister smiled. "Mom's already planning Sunday dinner. Says she's perfecting her pot roast recipe." The thought of my mother cooking for my husband would have seemed impossible a year ago. But she had made genuine efforts to welcome him into the family, recognizing his importance in my life, even if she sometimes struggled to relate to his urban sensibilities. After dinner, as we walked back to my parents' house where I was staying during this visit, my father said quietly, "You know, when you left 6 years ago, I was convinced we'd lost you forever. I never imagined we'd end up here." "Neither did I admitted. "Life takes unexpected turns. The best ones usually do," he replied. Later that night, standing in my childhood bedroom that my mother had maintained all these years, I looked out at the familiar street where I had grown up. I thought about the journey that had brought me from that birthday dinner confrontation to this moment, owner of a successful hotel group, developer of a new venture with my sister, daughter and sister in a family slowly healing its wounds. The path hadn't been straight. It had required courage to leave, success to be seen, and wisdom to find a way back that didn't require sacrificing who I had become. It had required my family to recognize their mistakes and make room for change. It had required all of us to learn that love shouldn't be conditional on following a prescribed path. Most of all, it had required truth, speaking it, hearing it, and allowing it to transform us. As I looked out at the stars above my hometown, I thought about how sometimes we have to leave a place to find our way back to it on our own terms. How success isn't just about proving others wrong, but about creating a life that aligns with our deepest values. How forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but creates space for a different future. The Grand Lumiere would always be special to me, the place where I had established my independence, where I had finally been seen by my family. But Cascade Valley Retreat represented something even more meaningful. Not just personal success, but a bridge between who I had been and who I had become. Not just a business venture, but a family healing. Have you ever had to leave something behind to find your way forward? Or experienced a moment when you were finally seen for who you truly are? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of family reconciliation resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over family blindness. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late for healing and new beginnings. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most beautiful transformations.